Welcome to Two Luckies,
the podcast,
and our series Dyin,
Cryin,
and
Lyin.
This is a series of us talking about Little House on the Prairie and our take on it as adults.
It is very different as an adult.
Very different. And if you sum this all up, they can fall into one of three categories, either Dyin,
They're crying,
or they're
lying.
So sit back, relax, come take an adventure with us as we reminisce on Little House the Prairie, Dyin,
Cryin,
and
Lyin.
Lyin.
Season 1, Child of Pain. We start at night at a farm we are not recognizing.
Never seen it before.
A man is riding in on a horse, and they do a lot of horse riding in like no moon conditions at night for some reason lately in the show. And he comes in, he's looking around in the barn for a bottle of whiskey. He drinks the last little bit of it and comes inside to his son who is peeling potatoes. And he is very upset because the son has gotten rid of his bottles of whiskey. He forgot the meat for the dinner, so they're just eating potatoes. And the child is the one making the dinner.
How old would you say this child is?
I'd say he's probably like 8 or 9.
Right.
Yeah, and then the child says that I think his name is Graham, says that he busted up the 2 bottles of whiskey because the father had said that he was going to stop drinking. And the father is screaming and yelling, and then he gets out the belt, and he's coming at this child like he is going to harm him. And then the next scene starts with Miss Beadle ringing that bell from Tinker. So
Ring-a-ding-ding.
Thank you, Tinker, because this bell is used like pretty much in the whole rest of the series. Now the children are in school, and this Graham child has a black eye from his paw. And Miss Beadle gives an assignment. All of the children are staring at him. He's trying to cover his face. And Miss Beadle gives them an assignment to work on quietly because she's going to be out of the schoolroom for a while. And she takes Graham with her. And then we get to Doc Baker's, and looks like he's getting some coffee, and Charles just walked in.
He's there for the coffee.
He's there for the coffee.
Wonder if he has his pipe.
Maybe.
Chaz is at Doc Baker's because he's actually going to pay a bill.
He received his
Can you
back
believe
wages
that?
from Mr. Hanson.
So he pays Doc Baker, and then we see Miss Beadle show up with this young boy from the school, and we're going to call out a first case of
Prairie.
Why is that? Because Chaz sticks around while this kid comes in and is asked to take his shirt off. Chaz, why do you need to be there for that?
Well, and interestingly enough, he goes to leave when he realizes that the boy is now being asked to take off his shirt in front of everybody in the room. So we have Doc Baker, we have Charles, and we have Miss Beadle, and now the boy is being asked to take off his shirt to show his back with all the lashing stripes on his back.
Yeah, his back is tore up.
His back is torn up, and Doc Baker does something for it. But Miss Beadle asked Charles to stay.
She asked him to stay, and then Doc Baker, asked the boy if he was hit anywhere else, and the boy says that he fell out of a tree. We're going to call that Lyin. You didn't fall out of a tree. You were beaten senseless by your pa's belt.
Yes, and then they already knew it, no matter how much he said it was a tree. Doc Baker said that must have been some tree. So now they're coming together to come with a plan because they realize this is the 4th time we're informed
in as many months.
In as many months that this child has been beaten by his father. They all know it, even though the child has been lying, trying to protect his pa. And then now they are coming up with a plan because we've been told that Doc Baker has spoken to the father and it did nothing, and that Reverend Alden had spoken to the father and it hasn't helped. And now Charles has come up with a plan to get the entire town
to gang up on him.
Well, I think they're trying to do some kind of an intervention, but either way, they're trying to get involved. And then Charles says that Doc Baker is a better Christian than him because Doc Baker says, well, the father needs help just as much as the child. And Charles says,
I don't care about the father, I only care about the boy.
Right, so he could care less about this father. He just wants to help the child, which really, they're a family. You should be helping both of them. But we find out that even Charles knows he's not such a great Christian sometimes.
Called it out. We're at the church, and it looks like we have the whole town there, and they're trying to discuss what
All the
should
adults, at
happen
least, yes.
to this father who's beating this kid. And then out of nowhere, in walks this guy with his little boy,
And
and
he
he
seems
looks like
drunk.
he's drunk. Yes.
He seems very drunk.
So this guy right away calls them out on their
Cryin.
says, "What right do you have to stick your nose in my business?"
I mean, all the adults in town are in this building all talking about them specifically. And
So-
Charles is the only one who comes forward and says, we know what's happening with your child. And the guy is yelling, there's nothing you can do about it. And he's like, we can take your child away from him. And the child
says, "No, no, no, I won't go," and runs and hugs his pa and
says he wants to live with him. He wants to stay. And
and that
sometimes
he's
he's bad sometimes.
and all the excuses you get from a kid that's beat.
They were even going so far as talking about potentially getting the law involved.
Right. So the two of them, the pa and the beaten kid, leave the church and leave everybody standing there with the morose look on their face.
Yes, because for all of their talk, they really got nowhere. It's bedtime at the Ingalls farm. Ma's already laying in bed. Charles is in his nightgown, getting ready to sit down on the bed after all the girls are asleep. And they are still talking about the events of the day and how Ma can't get it out of her head. And Charles is saying how even a beaten dog stays with its master, and they're trying to figure out what to do because, I mean, Ma is incredulous about the fact that this child still loves a father that beats him. And it's his father. So, like,
It's
they're really
sad.
trying to figure out what to do. And then Charles blows out the lantern, and they were so late with the moonlight coming through the window that there's like a period of like where it's just dark in the room before like the supposed moonlight shows up. So we had to give a little production because it's a very serious episode, and we're trying to give it a little
Zing.
extra, but we do like to watch what the production people are doing, and they were a little late with that moon.
A little late.
Little late.
Well, go Chaz.
Go Chaz.
Well, we got to call out the shirt report. He is wearing the new shirt from the Christmas episode.
Yay! Woo! Mary made him a shirt, and Mom made the same shirt, and he's wearing one of them.
So he changed it up.
Yes,
So
he changed it up.
here's the scene. We've got the kids coming out of the schoolhouse. Maybe it looks like they're going for recess. And Miss Beadle stops Laura and asks where
her father
is. Oh, he's right over there at the mill. It's like, you were just looking over there. You didn't see him.
I mean, he's very visible. He stands out. He pretty much works outdoors.
So anyway, she goes over to the mill and talks to Chaz and tells him that the little Graham boy didn't come to school today.
And he's not usually this late. Now, what we're sitting here thinking is, there were 4 school board members within like 100 to 200 feet of this school.
You've got Doc Baker,
Yep,
you've got Mr. Hanson, and you have Harriet and Nels Olson, all of whom are right in that town square. Why are you going to Chaz?
But she went to Charles, I guess maybe because Charles was like the self-appointed,
Leader
hero
of
of this whole group. But he's wearing his new shirt for Mary, or maybe even Ma. We don't know whether she's rotating them around in the laundry.
And he's grabbing the wagon, and he's going to head on out to the Graham kids' place and get to the bottom of
Well,
this.
and we're looking at him. He's jingling around with that dream team from the 100-mile walk, and he's almost there. Charles goes into the house, and I would describe this as ransacked.
Oh, yeah.
The furniture's destroyed.
The front door was wide open.
The front door is wide open. Everything is thrown around. It looks like somebody took everything and just tossed it all over the place. And he's looking around. He doesn't see anybody at first. And then he sees Graham's shoes, the little boy, sees his shoes, moves the table out of the way and finds him laying on the floor, wraps him up in a blanket, and puts him in the back of the wagon and they're carrying people again, and they like carrying people in the show. He carries them puts them in the back of the wagon, and then as they're leaving, we see that the father of this child has a bottle in his lap, and he is like snoozing off this drunkenness in the barn.
Yep, so real interesting.
Yes.
Chaz brought the boy to Doc Baker, who is examining him on his table and says he can't tell how bad he is, and he won't know until he wakes up. He's still unconscious. And then this father that beat the kid shows up, yelling at the door, "Where's my boy?" And Chaz just takes task right to him, grabs a hold of him and right up against the door, and maybe you ought to see for yourself. So he brings the father in, holding him by the back of his neck. This kid tries to talk to the boy, which brought us to
Cryin.
Now the father's beside himself and asking them all for help.
So at least he's asking for help, and we find out that he must be a blackout drunk where he drinks so much that he's
it's
unable
bad.
to remember what he's doing. And it seems like every time he gets this drunk, this poor child is having a horrible experience every time. But now he's asking for help, so hopefully we're turning it around.
Let's see.
We're not even done with this scene, and I got a comment. So we are now in the school/church room. All the adults that were over there talking about this man before and what to do about this whole situation are now over here. And all I could think of was they look like they were just ready to get the torches and the pitchforks. I mean, Mrs. Olsen is
Right.
incensed. We
It is
find out
nighttime,
that
too.
the father is locked in Hanson's
Storeroom.
storeroom and he's sleeping off whatever he had been drinking. And they're all talking about punishing this man. And Ma speaks up, which go Ma. She
Go, Ma.
speaks up that if you, all I hear is you talking about punishing the father. If you hurt the father, you hurt the child. And they're looking around like they've never heard of this concept ever. I mean, like, what? Aren't they looking at the same thing that we're looking at?
And I'll tell you what I'm looking at. You got Reverend Alden standing up there at the pulpit. I mean, this isn't church. Obviously, it's a meeting. So he's standing up there, assuming that he's trying to run it.
Yeah, you know, usually when you're standing in front of the room, you're
Why
kind
is
of in charge
everybody
of
else
it.
taking the floor and all he has to say is Doc Baker?
And they're all screaming back and forth. But now, you know, Ma's over here trying to be rational and say we need to help both of them, not just one of them, and that they're a family unit. And they are. I mean, they go over to Reverend Alden, and he looks like he's never heard of this concept. You're a reverend. I mean, like, sometimes I sit here with this storyline and I wonder what they're doing, but hopefully they will help this child. But they are very upset here, and they're trying to figure out what to do. In all this going back and forth, because there are some people, including the Olsons, and I forgot the Kennedy, is that his name?
That's
He's
Kennedy.
standing over there. He's been in another episode, arms crossed, and they're saying pretty much that this guy is useless. He's a waste of life. And Ma was saying about how if your animals were sick, you would try to cure them. If you cure this guy, you help two people. You save two people. And she inadvertently makes it so that Charles just got volunteered to watch this man as he dries out from being drunk.
Well, Chaz was voluntold because Doc Baker stood up and said that this guy can get treatment, but somebody's going to have to watch him around the clock.
Right, and because Mrs. Ingalls was the one over there making all these suggestions, all of a sudden they turn to Charles and say, what of it? And he's like, well, I can give it a try. So no one else, out of all of these adults, no one else could help. No one else could even say, we'll take turns. Nope. It's all on Charles. And now this boy now looks like he's thankfully recovered. He's standing here with Ma. We're back at the Ingalls farm. And we're going to find out what's happening. But he does look like he's standing up and he looks like he is recovering here.
So Ma's sitting in front of her house trying to talk to this boy and tell him how it's good that he's staying with them and that Pa Chaz is over at his place staying with his pa.
And that everything's going to be okay. And as she gets to, how would you, because so far Graham was not talking back to her. He wasn't replying or saying anything to what she was saying. And then she says, well, how would your father think, you know, if you didn't have supper? And he says, oh, he wouldn't know anyway. He's always drunk by supper time. And she looks horrified.
Horrified, but then goes inside the house and leaves him outside. Isn't it your job to be watching him?
Well, I guess she's trying to give him some space, but Laura and Mary have supper on the table. They just called to say everything was ready, and we have a Carrie sighting. She's in the high chair.
Carrie's in the high chair.
Woo! Yay, Carrie! Graham does come in and have dinner while he gets there just as they're ready to say grace. So he does join supper at the Ingalls, and
He's
then
there.
We go over to this other farm. I don't know this guy's name.
I don't
And
know.
Charles is working that shirt for Mary because he's
Oh.
still got it on. And he is very unhappy, Charles, about this situation. He wants to be home with his family. And he says, the only reason I'm here is because my wife thinks there's some decency in you. So he is not looking forward to being with this guy. And this guy comes out and is trying to give him the whiskey. And he puts we were talking about this. Like, why would you he has all of these bottles that he has of whiskey look like they have been either
Yeah,
more than
partially
half.
drunk.
Partially
but
drunk.
not
One of
all
them
of
only
them.
has a quarter of the liquid left in it.
So he puts 2 bottles on the table and he says, that's all of it, to which we have to call a
Lyin.
because not too shortly after he goes behind something or other and pulls
It was like
out
he
a
was
third
had it in
bottle.
the wall.
I bet you he's got some in the barn too.
Well, so Charles actually is very forcefully tells him, go outside and pour it out. And then he kind of half-heartedly pours out all of this whiskey. But meanwhile, give me all the whiskey. He only gave him 1 more bottle. I don't believe this guy only has 3 bottles.
Right.
And most of them aren't even full. Like, they're not even half full. And now he is sweating it out at night. We'll find out what happened.
It's nighttime at this guy's place, and they show him fast asleep, and all of a sudden he wakes up, and it looks like he's hallucinating now and going crazy.
Well, he's seeing a bat.
Yeah,
Like
attacking
flying
him.
around.
So which wakes up Chaz, and now all of a sudden there's a big kerfuffle and scuffle going on, and Chaz is trying to manhandle this guy as he's just out of his mind.
I mean, he had to like hold him. He was throwing things and running around trying to run out of the cabin. We found out the father's name is John.
Yes,
and
John.
Charles is holding on to him for dear life as this guy is struggling to get away, and he's yelling, John, John. And then he thinks he gets him back to bed, and then he still comes
Starts
back
all
up. I
over
mean,
again.
this guy is really struggling. He was a very, very big drunk. We're back at the Ingalls farm. It must be morning. Mary and Laura are getting ready to go to school. They're coming down the ladder. Carrie is in the highchair.
Yay,
Woo!
Carrie!
Yay, Carrie! And Ma has made a special lunch for Graham, and Graham is very upset about having to take a lunch at all because apparently he doesn't
Right.
seem like he had a lot of food to begin with. So he doesn't want anybody to know that he's staying at the Ingalls farm. I guess nobody else in town seems to know,
Knows
which
what's-
I find that hard to believe because all of the adults in town were at this meeting when this all happened. And, when they decided that...
it's funny. The whole town's quick to pry in this situation, but when they might be prying into the Ingalls business, please let's keep it a secret.
Well, and so Graham wants to go by himself. He doesn't want to walk with Mary and Laura at all. And Ma says, well, I think he wants to make it so that nobody knows that he's here, which I find that hard to believe that nobody would know. I mean,
Right.
the whole town is
Right.
involved with this situation here. The girls are bringing the lunch, and they are instructed by Ma to pretend that they just had extra food, to which I am calling a Lyin. When you're pretending you're lying, especially when you're doing something like this.
We know what Chaz's plan is to help this guy. He's gonna work him right into the ground so he's so tired he won't have a chance to get up and have any kind of issues.
Yeah, but Charles is actually helping. So like
Yes.
he's helping him do work in the barn. John is it looks like he's that post hole digger.
Post hole digger.
And we find out that apparently he never drank water because he said that Charles gave him some water and he was like, it's so pale and hardly has any taste. And I guess I'll have to get used to it. It's like, you never drank any water.
I guess
So
not.
Charles is that's his plan. He's going to make him so incredibly tired that he won't have any hallucinations. He's just going to sleep. Okay, I am calling a little bull here on this scene.
Bull.
We're back at the Ingalls farm, and Mary is standing outside with Graham. Graham has never fed chickens before, has no idea how to tell between a boy and a girl chicken, doesn't seem to really understand how to tell between a boy and a girl anything, and he lives on a farm at a time in the 1800s, and I just find this, he is out in the middle of like a farm. He does not live in town. It's not like,
No.
I just find it really hard to believe. And we find out that Mary was given a chicken by Ma, that she was raising, a hen that she was raising, and now she just gifted it to Graham and says that he tries to say, no, I can't take it. And she says, it would be impolite for you to give it back. You have to take it. So I just feel like this was a filler where they really weren't thinking very much about like the logistics of the time period I find it very hard to believe.
Not to mention, Mary could not explain the difference between a boy chicken and a girl chicken.
I mean, you could have at least said that
Really?
the boy chickens crow, or like I no, instead she said
They're just
boy chickens
different.
are like paws and girl chickens are like ma's. And if you reach under a chicken and there's an egg, that's a girl. But roosters don't go in the nesting boxes.
We're back with Pa and the drunk, and it looks like the drunk has developed the DTs.
He's shaking so hard that he can't even do the work that they're trying to do around the yard.
So Pa brings him back into the house, and now it's nighttime, and we're back at the Ingalls place.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of switching around here. Ma is cleaning up the dishes while the girls are clearing the table, when that's Mary and Laura. And
Yep.
we find out that Graham is outside but had tried to surprise Mrs. Ingalls by cleaning out the stalls outside. But
Yeah.
he told them not to say anything, to which we call that a Lyin.
Lyin.
But it was a little surprise, so it's not that bad, I guess.
No.
But he's outside cleaning the stalls, and then he asks for permission to make a cage for the chicken that he's been gifted, and calls that chicken a hen, which we know it's a hen. And so I don't know really why they're like, I don't get
think he's
this.
just
Like,
being a little kid.
I just think the writers
all.
don't know what they're talking about. But either way, it doesn't matter, because then now he's trying to make this cage, and she says, "Oh, it sounds very complicated." And I guess his father had taught him how to do this for this purpose, that they're saying that he has
Right.
no idea what's going on. And then Ma tells him, "We have the same problem. You miss your father and I miss my husband." And we don't think that's the same problem at all. But
No,
either way,
no.
this kid does seem like he's perking up and he's thriving under the conditions of being part of more of a family unit, at least. We're back at the farm with John and Charles, and we end up this scene with the Smirkaloo.
Smirkity
He
smirk
is
smirk.
smirking after the whole montage of work that they're doing. They show them fixing up things and around the farm. And this guy John is really struggling, but he's trying very hard to do it. Charles is washing dishes in this brown
Yeah,
water.
it was
This
nasty.
water looked like it was more mud than water. I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to do about that, but they're fixing up the farm. And now Charles, with the Smirkaloo, informs John that while Charles is making a new door for their cabin, he is, the cabin for John and Graham, that he brought a plow and that John is going to be making a cornfield right over there. So Charles likes to bring out that smirk when he gets that bossy pants out. He's got his bossy pants on and he is telling this guy what to do with his own house, his own life, and everything else.
Go Chaz.
Go Chaz!
It's nighttime. We're back at the Ingalls farm, and Ma and Graham are out in the barn, and it looks like she's trying to help him build this cage for the chicken. And while all this is going on, then we finally get to the story of why the father has been drinking this whole time. It seems that the kid's mother, whose name was Lucy, had died in childbirth, and they brought us our, looks like, one and only
Dyin! We knew they couldn't keep it out.
And it looks like that's why the father's been drinking, and this kid is just holding back no punches. He's very honest. He says, yep, the father blames him for the mother dying, and now he gets drunk, and that's the only time he beats him.
Well, we found out that Graham doesn't blame himself for the mother dying, and the father does blame him for dying, because I don't know why Ma assumed that you mustn't blame yourself for your mother dying. And he says, I don't. He's very clear.
She's hearing these stories, and she just looks like beside herself.
She looks horrified.
So,
and
yes.
this kid is pretty much like matter of fact about the whole deal of it, but he's very clear on the situation. We're back over at John and Graham's place. Charles is over there with the Smirkaloo with his hands deep in his pocket. Reverend Alden is standing there, and John comes over, and Reverend Alden says, "You look fine." And John says, "Well," and then you can see Charles is over there like he's beaming about what a good job he did. And when Reverend Alden is asked by John, "Why are you out here?" he says, "Oh, my usual rounds," to which we find out it's a Lyin. Reverend Alden is lying because he's never come out here this way before. Reverend Alden tries to explain away his Lyin of "I'm just making the rounds" by explaining that he had gone over to the Ingalls farm and they asked him to go stop by. And this guy John is not very happy about Reverend Alden being out there. And he finds out that, Graham is doing well and he misses him. And really, it's kind of interesting because this father and son really do seem to love each other. It's just that when the father is drinking, that's when
it's an unfortunate situation.
It's an unfortunate situation, but Reverend Alden is telling Charles to be, be easy on him. And Charles tells him, I'll do what I have to do. So he's already determined that he has decided the best course of action, and his hands are deep in his pocket. And there he is. He has decided, and that's what he's going to do.
Go Chaz.
Go Chaz.
We're still on the farm with Charles and John, and we find out what Pa's ultimate plan is to confront this guy about his wife dying and him blaming the boy for it. But in the course of all this, it's funny how this guy calls out the Reverend's
Lyin, and all of the towns Prairie, and then they talk about Dyin. It was action-packed. They knew they had to press those buttons for us because this is Dyin, Cryin, and Lyin, and they know it.
And Charles goes right to the task and starts just nonchalantly asking him about his wife, what'd she die of, and then finally tells him, that's right, you blame the boy, when the guy finally says that she died in childbirth.
Yeah, but he was prying like he had that crowbar out of Mom's basket over there. Ma always has her crowbar in that basket. And Charles was prying until he got the answer that the mother had died in childbirth.
I will say, give props to Chaz on one hand because he did, try to get to the bottom of all this, but I'm going to say he was a little idiotic too because it's probably not the best time to question a guy like this while he's swinging an axe.
Well, and this guy is swinging an axe like he's never held one before in his life. He is holding this axe in the middle of the handle.
He's choked
two-handed in the middle of the handle, and it's bouncing off, and it is a very, very dull axe. We found out that we were right, our suspicions were correct when he only handed over 3 bottles of whiskey to Charles, that he was a lion. He goes out in the middle of the night, he sneaks out to the barn, John, and he goes through the straw and he finds a bottle that he said he didn't tell him about, which we already know is a lion. And he pours it out, which I wasn't expecting that. But I also was thinking that now the horse, because he just poured it out into the hay, that horse is going to be walking sideways for a while because he poured it out and into that. But he did, I guess, whatever Charles did about talking to him about blaming Graham for the death of his mother has now gotten through to John, and he said that it gave him pleasure to pour whiskey out, which is a good thing.
He fessed up and said that he did blame the boy for his wife's death, and then admitted he loved the boy, and, Chaz is telling him they need to get some sleep because he's looking forward to going home tomorrow and finish with the biggest smirkety smirk.
He had the smirkaloo and his hands deep in his pockets, and he walked out all happy. And now we're back at the Ingalls farm, and Graham is sitting with Ma and Mary and Laura and Carrie in the high chair.
Yay, Carrie.
Woo! Charles comes home. He's hugging and kissing his family and welcome. Graham looks at him expectantly, and he says, your pa's outside. So he goes running outside. There's this whole swelling of the music. Everything's right with the world. And then Graham is hugging his father, and he goes in and gets that chicken. They grab onto the crate that Graham had made in the barn to take the chicken
it was pretty
back.
Well made, too.
It did. He did a good job with it, and I'm happy that their family's back together, and the father did look like he was feeling better. But in response to all of this, he doesn't come over and thank them or anything for taking care of the child. Ma is vindicated.
Him a quick nod.
Yeah, he throws him a quick nod. Ma is vindicated that she was right as she's hugging Charles's arm, and then they carry. John and Graham are carrying this chicken back home. Now, we know that people live miles away. They couldn't give them a ride back. Like, really? I'm looking at this, like, this great, epic, swelling whatever, and now they got to walk miles home with this. I felt bad for the chicken in this crate. Hopefully, they didn't hold the chicken in there too much longer. I kind of thought that was a little wonky way to end it, but...
it was a little weird. I mean, very serious subject matter here, but they did hit all 3 of our categories.
They hit all 3 of our categories because they mentioned Dyin, Cryin, Lyin. They were lying themselves. They were talking about Dyin. There was crying from the father, and they hit all of our categories because they knew they had to give it to us. But I will say it was kind of a slow episode. It was a very serious topic, but at least it ended up well, and in less than an hour, all of your problems have been solved. Thank Thank you, Little House. Thank you, writers. Thank you for the Carrie report. We had a whole different shirt.
Well,
but once again,
up in
Pa,
the
you
game.
brought it up. Pa has been away from home again for the episode because he spent at least a week, maybe more, at this other guy's farm, and he did a ton of work over there. He did make it look good, but I get what they're doing. But we had the guest star of Prairie, and they even had the whole town was in on this.
Oh, the whole
they
town.
were Prairie.
Prairie.
So if you like this, come on, please tell a friend. Give us some comments and some feedbacks. If you like it, just kind of share it because we're having fun making this series and we want you to have fun too.
Pass it along and be sure to join us for the next episode, which is called Money Crop.
Money Crop.
And that concludes this episode of Two Luckies,
Two Luckies, the podcast.
and our series Dyin
Cryin.
and Lyin.
Lyin. We release these in threes, so if you enjoyed it, there's more. Go check it out.
Go check them out. We'll see you next time.
We're out.
See ya.
Two Luckies, the podcast.
Two Luckies podcast.
Two Luckies, the podcast.
Hey, you stayed.
Woo-hoo!
It's time for that fun fact. This is the first episode we produced in our new studio.
Yes, well, studio. It's a room that we have that has blankets and towels taped to the wall to
It's
deaden the
actually
sound.
set up better for recording voices.
Yeah, so we're hoping that the sound is better this way. But this is our first episode with our new setup. Even though it's pretty much everything in our linen closet taped to the walls. But so far, we think it's been pretty good.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Yay! I'm glad you stayed.